My name is Nader. Thank you for joining us. I am the lead for the public sector practice here at Environics Analytics. And I'm introducing a couple of our friends and allies here from the City of Ottawa who are going to tell you about Curating Connection, which I think is a fantastic name for this session. We've got Melissa Lansing. She's an audience development officer for visitor studies at the city. This is for the City of Ottawa Museums and Historic Sites, of which there are many, as you'll find out. She's a graduate of the University of Birmingham's MA in Heritage Management, and Melissa's passion is really about creating relevant, sustainable, and meaningful experiences for visitors to the 5 museums that are owned and operated by the City of Ottawa. I do want to contextualize this for just a moment by telling you that, by reminding you that, we have a lot of Canada's national museums also in that very same city. So it's a tall order. Melissa's job is a tall order. Anyway, Melissa's joined by Tamitha Trenholm as well, who's our senior data analytics strategist here at the City of Ottawa. Now, Tamitha has been a staunch ally and has been the glue that has created the environment for the City of Ottawa to be able to engage with Environics Analytics data across a lot of departments. So thank you, Tamitha, for all the effort that you brought to this. So Tamitha comes from an educational background and a professional background in data analytics, specifically in the nonprofit and social services side. And in the public service, she's passionate about leveraging data to inform projects and programs that improve the lives of individuals and communities. Now, we have about 20 minutes left for this talk, so I'm going to pass it on to Tamitha, who will introduce, and Melissa, who will tell us the story. Thank you.
Hi, so thank you for the introduction, Nader, and thank you for inviting us here today. I'm going to try not to take up too much of your time because really Melissa's got all the cool stuff to say. I am just here for the boring intro part. Just a little bit about Environics Analytics and our experience at the city and how it's evolved. So we first heard about Environics Analytics in around 2015 from our libraries, from our theater groups. They were kind of using stuff. We heard about it. It talked a bit at the city, nothing really happened except sort of the word started to grow. Then around 2019, we decided to do a pilot year, so we introduced it to the corporation, we started using it. In 2020, we had departments that were engaged with it who decided to cost share an enterprise license and use that. And then, of course, in 2020, as soon as our new contract started, COVID hit. So usage changed dramatically. Nothing that we thought was going to happen happened. Departments that were totally on board had all of their people reassigned to support public health and to support community and social services. And we had a ton of folks, like departments that were very understaffed for a while we were all in emergency mode for several years. And then, so during that time, we had huge uptake in some groups and then lower in the ones we anticipated. And then COVID started to end. And then we started to get the calls of, okay, people are back to their real jobs. And now this Environics thing, we've been paying for it, but we haven't had the chance to use it. And Melissa was actually one of those calls. And I think she'll talk a little bit about that. So then we were able to really start focusing at the day-to-day and not the emergency. And that also then led to even more growth, more usage, to the point that then we were really excited this year. With Environics, we had signed our first 3-year contract, so it's not year over year, which it was before, and it's fully enterprise. Every department in the city has access to it, has someone with a seat, and we can really use it corporate-wide. It's now considered a corporate tool. And that was a really exciting moment for me, for Nader. We've been working on this for years, so it was really great to see that finally come to fruition. And that also meant that we've been using it more. So now we have the opportunity to actually come here and speak about some of the projects that we're doing. And in particular, Melissa's going to speak now to some of the great work that museums did and fantastic use of mobilescapes and just I'm still in awe of her story. So I'm going to hand it over to her so she can tell it. Thank you.
Awesome. So thanks, Tamitha. First off, no pressure on me now. As Nader said, my name is Melissa Lansing, and I am the Audience Development Officer for Visitor Studies for the City of Ottawa Museums and Historic Sites. The City of Ottawa owns and operates 5 different museums and historic sites, and our mandate is to create engaged, diverse, healthy, and sustainable communities. Now, before I get started, I do have a confession to make. I am not a data analyst. I'm not even really a marketing person. My background is in museum interpretation, right? Telling the stories of people and places of the past. And museums tell stories, and today I wanted to tell you the story of our data journey. But before we get started in that, I did want to talk a little bit about museums and how we think. So first off, as municipal museums, we can't really just choose a specific audience and then create a really nice niche market or product for them. We are responsible for creating experiences that meet the needs of all the people of Ottawa, no matter their background, no matter where they're from, no matter who they are. Effective museum interpretation itself is all about creating products and services that resonate with people. I should be able to go to a museum and have a story that relates to something going on in my own life. And any experience that doesn't do that, that doesn't build that connection, we know in the museum field that that's just going to fall flat and it's not going to be meaningful. The way museums do this is through what we call visitor studies, hence my title. I started 12 years ago at the City of Ottawa Museums, and when I did that, we were just doing paper surveys that I have the carpal tunnel to prove were inputted manually into Excel, just stats sheets at the front desk with the little tick boxes. And over the past decade, we've really improved our commitment to being data informed. And today our visitor studies program includes digital surveys, visitor experience audits, public engagement, and social media and website analytics. And I didn't put EA on here, but obviously that's a no-brainer. We were seeing results. Management was excited, our colleagues were excited. We were able to have more confidence in our decision making, and even in some cases make real-time pivots and changes to our products to meet a customer need, sometimes even in real time. But the thing was, there was always a feeling that something was missing. The problem is, when you start to have a decent amount of data, even your own internal data, people start to get excited and want more, right? We were getting all this feedback, but managers kept saying, okay, this is great, this is great. We know that everyone loves our wagon rides, they come for the afternoon tea, and they like to make ice cream, but why? Why are they doing this? Why do they enjoy it? And I could never answer these questions without falling into what I call I thinks. And why is so important, because without that understanding, we can't make that connection. We can't understand why something is resonating with a person. Our own internal data also had a few blind spots, just because of the nature of the beast, right? Limited demographics being collected, no psychographics really at all. Plus the fact that not everyone fills out a survey, no matter how hard I beg them to. And a lot of people use our museums just as parks, and we don't know anything about them, let alone, and this is the reality check, the people who don't visit and fully aware, the people who don't even know we exist. As Nader said, we really are a small fish in a big pond with all the national institutions in Ottawa. So that was always something we were trying to figure out. My own experience our experience with Environics started in 2018 when one of my senior managers heard about EA coming out to the city to do a sales pitch, and they were like, you need to go to this. I want you to go. This is what we should be doing. And I will admit I was a bit skeptical. I was like, what's this, right? When I came back, though, I was so excited. I immediately went on the online lookup tool and started using up my 25 a day and begging my colleagues to give me their cell phones so I could use my paper survey postal codes to start pulling reports. So I was that person. We even had a meeting with a salesperson at the time. And unfortunately, our service line within the city at the museums is so tiny. We couldn't afford a license on our own, as much as I would have dreamed of that. So we had to put everything on the back burner in hopes of one day someone with more clout than us could get a corporate license. In 2021, much like Tamitha said, I was redeployed to Ottawa Public Health, and I was minding my own business, working on COVID stuff, and I got this random email from a woman I'd never heard of being like, hey, how are you using Envision? How does it benefit you? And I remember I wrote back being like, oh my God, I didn't even know we had it. I'm public health right now, but I swear to God, when I get back to museums, I will be using it. Please, please, please make sure it's still there. This was Tamitha. I didn't know who she was. And I'm sure at the time she was wondering who this wild, crazy woman from museums was. Now she knows. But that was a huge, exciting milestone for me. So as soon as I got back into my regular job in 2022, got on the phone, called Tamitha, got my access, and started playing around in Envision. Now, very basic, right? Like executive summaries, maybe a map, nothing crazy. But as I got to use it, I started asking more questions, and I started like, Tamitha, can I figure this out? And then I started explaining those data gaps and those challenges we had. And I still remember the day, it was a Teams meeting. I remember your little face down in the corner being like, have you heard of mobilescapes? Which really changed everything for me, for us. So if you go back to those challenges, those gaps in our data that I talked about, it makes perfect sense that mobilescapes would solve that problem. You know, this was going to get us information, even if people didn't register for a program, like if they just showed up and donated and just walked in the house. If they don't fill out a survey, and all those people that are walking around on the grounds, we could finally figure out who they actually were. I probably got a little bit too excited, and I got really specific in my geofences because I wanted to answer all of these questions I had. Our museums are really different in and of themselves, but even within them, we have different service lines which have different audiences. So some of the questions I was dreaming of answering were, okay, all those people in the park at Pinny's Point Historic Site, do they visit inside the house too? Those people that go for the tea on the lawn at Billings Estate National Historic Site, do they ever come for our other programs? And similarly, all the folks that come to our really popular Vintage Village of Lights Christmas program, do they ever come back to the Cumberland Heritage Village Museum the rest of the year? We had also finished a big research project internally, which kind of gave us the reality check that a good chunk of the people in Ottawa weren't really aware of us and our services. So when we approached EA, our big picture question was just the general, how do we get more people to our museums and who are they? It took about a year from when we started having those conversations to when the data was delivered. And I have to say that was a huge learning curve for me. Learning how to make the geofence maps, the data pulls, and Mitchell's here. I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I sent you all the wrong GIS files while I was learning how to do this. I had no clue what I was doing. So a lot of different things for myself and my colleagues to learn. I think we were the first mobilescapes project at the city, so I almost said scapegoat, that's not the right word. I was the guinea pig, that's what it is. So the data was delivered in March 2024. We delayed it a little bit because we wanted to have that Christmas data because it's one of our biggest seasons. And I remember when we got the presentation, like my mind was completely blown. All these assumptions changed, all these I thinks turned into I knows. I'm going to show you a few examples, but one of those, we do have a big assumption common in rec, right? A lot of the recreation centers, we just serve the people just around the center. The data proved to us that from the museums, we truly are the City of Ottawa Museums. And even though our museums are spread across the entire distance of Ottawa, people will come from everywhere to come and participate in our programs. I feel like I already knew that, but I was glad to have the data to back me up on that. I have to admit, though, that along with the data and some of these insights, we did get the raw data, which was great. But I remember when I finally figured out how to take that Excel sheet and break it down, I was really, really excited and completely overwhelmed. The sheet is probably as wide as I am tall, and I am short, but that is still a huge document to try and parse out for yourself, especially, like I said, when I'm not used to working in that kind of stuff. I said, fortunately, unfortunately, data interpretation is a part of my job. We also have a best practice at the City of Ottawa Museums that no one looks at data alone. And so I was very fortunate to have my colleague, who's also an audience development officer, and this is my shout out to my awesome colleague, Jennifer Maybank, who does have a background in marketing and communications, to go through this data with. It took us a while to go through everything and figure out what we were looking at. And we realized that while we had asked EA one question, how do we get more people to the museums, the data that we were delivered could tell us so much more. And we embarked on this maybe crazy, in hindsight, journey to use the data to fill in the gaps that we had. and to create our own segmentation target groups to help with product development and understanding the people of Ottawa. You know, we had the data that was now telling us who visited. Jen and I started embarking on this quest to figure out why. So I also need to clarify, in case you hadn't already caught on, that we were very much Envision newbies at this point, and the presentation earlier about Envision 2.0, I was like, where was this when I was working through it? We were really learning on the spot, and we didn't know everything it could do, so we were like manually going through the marketing guide and highlighting like anything we thought was relevant for our colleagues for museum product development. And early on, it became very clear that it was the social values that were the most important to our colleagues. And you remember when I said how connection is something that makes a quality museum experience? It was these social values that we realized we could leverage in order to ensure that we were making connections between the past and our visitors' present, right? You also need to realize, I was going to say, no, I already told you that. One of the things, see, this is a perfect example of why I'm excited by Envision 2.0. This was us taking over the boardroom in our murder map. Anyway, we started looking at the values, and then we were like, okay, their hobbies, their other leisure pursuits, their life stage, where they live, their communities, and we started with over 20 segments, but we knew that was going to be way too many for our colleagues to deal with, and it ended up being able to narrow them down to 7 target groups, which I just recently found out comprise 84% of the population of Ottawa, which was always a little bit of a good thing. We were really hoping it was not like 10%. So 84 is a good starting point for us. And our goal is that, our logic here is that we start by understanding these folks, using the insights provided by EA in terms of growth potential, and then make recommendations to our colleagues in exhibitions, programming, and to create experiences and products that are going to meet the needs of our residents. So while that segmentation tool and our groupings are a really interesting thing to come to the project, I'm going to share a few of the intangible and interesting insights that were buried in the data that we've already been able to incorporate into our work. I mentioned Piney's Point Historic Site earlier in the grounds. You know, we were always pretty confident that there were a lot of people using the park. It's gorgeous. If you have a chance to go, go. But we had no idea how many there actually were, let alone who they were. In the Mobilescapes data that we provided indicated that there were over 30,000 visits to the park last year. And for us, that was like mind-blowing. We're talking 30,000 visits, people that are already there that we can reach, right? We had no idea that there were that many people. We also had a lot of assumptions from colleagues and even partners being like, oh yeah, those people in the park, they don't like museums, and it's just like the local guy walking his dog. That's the only people that go to the park. But the PRISM data was able to show us that people were coming out there, and I should say it's like 45 minutes from drive from downtown, which is nothing for Toronto, but in Ottawa, that's a big deal. And people were coming from urban, suburban, and rural communities to there. Plus, they were the same segments that show up at our actual museum programs. So now we know that they're already a potential market for us that we're not reaching. So we can create marketing. We're going to put more signs out there. That's for one thing. But find ways to reach them and grow and take advantage of that kind of existing audience that we weren't even aware of. There is also a long-standing assumption that museums are attended mostly by older, affluent folks. And I mean, I should say that in some museums that is true. But we'd always been priding ourselves on providing a varied portfolio of products that anecdotally attracted quite a diverse audience. But I never really felt 100% comfortable making any statements to that because I had no hard data. Oh, I'm sorry, of course it's my phone ringing. Anyway, any statements to that. And this is important to us because at the City of Ottawa, we serve all the people of Ottawa, as I said before. And we really need to be sure that our products are meeting the needs of the different people and just reaching a tiny, tiny fragment of the population. Interestingly enough, it was one of the things that the folks from EA flat out noted in our data when it was presented to us. Not only how diverse our audiences were across the board, but also how many of them were new Canadians. So this does give us a bit of confidence, talking to management about that, but also that we already have spaces that are generally inclusive and welcoming, and now we can reach other people and be like, we are also a place for you, right? Over the past year, we have been putting a lot of resources into improving general admissions, what we call the general admissions experience at the Cumberland Heritage Village Museum. You know, new exhibitions, new staff, new programs, new goats, and I'm not joking, they're the new goats. I should say I'm not kidding, they're the new goats. Sorry, I had to go there. And we were, striving to be data informed, and we were basing the decisions on the data that we did have, right? The results from our surveys for general admission, which I would then run through Envision, some public engagement I had done, and we were trying to be data informed in these decisions. The thing is, here when we're starting to get feedback, we're like, okay, everyone's enjoying this, but our attendance isn't quite going up where we were hoping it would with all this new stuff. The idea of if you build it, they will come. Jen and I started looking at the data. We realized from the Mobilescapes data that a good chunk of the people that were visiting were all part of one of the target groups we had created. And this was a target group that only made up 3.4% of the population of Ottawa. So inadvertently, we had painted ourselves into a little corner in terms of potential for growth. So we have now since been able to pivot our recommendations to reach markets, groups that have much more growth potential in Ottawa, still catering to these folks who already come, but making sure that our products have the potential to reach more people. So while we have some tangible tools and interesting insights for our colleagues, there are some things that have come out of this project that are so useful but intangible. Having spent so much time in the data myself, I now feel like I know the people of Ottawa better than ever. I drive around, I'm like, I know who lives here, right? I know what this is. And most importantly, it's already impacted the conversations that I've had with our residents. When I'm doing public engagement, when I'm on site, and when I'm doing marketing and communications at trade shows, there's me at the Navan Fair. It looks like I'm giving someone anyway. When I'm talking to people, I'm kind of now quickly able to figure out, based on my conversation, which of the target groups they fall into, and then tailor my conversation to them based on what I know of their social values and their interests. And I have colleagues watch me do this sometimes, and how did you know what to talk about? How did you figure this out? How did you know? And really, it's just information. But when you can leverage it properly, it does feel a little bit like a superpower, I have to say. I'm standing here today talking to a room of people who live and breathe this stuff, and it is not lost on me that 12 years ago, I was inputting paper surveys into Excel, and only 2 years ago, I didn't even have access to Environics data. Since then, I've become kind of like the nerdy super user at the City of Ottawa. All this from my tiny little service line, my tiny little cubicle at the City of Ottawa Museums, not just, all while doing my regular job, but better yet, integrating it into my job. And I'm pretty sure that's why I was asked to speak today, is because you don't need a PhD in statistics or marketing to do this. I'm really a firm believer that all you need are the right tools, some persistence, patience, and curiosity. So like I said, I am not a data analyst. Oh, and I forgot to put my last pictures on. I'm not a data analyst, but maybe I am, right? Thank you. There. Great. Hey.
Thank you, Melissa. Really engaging. Thank you very much. We do have time for a couple of questions. Yes?
You mentioned you worked in the healthcare sector, right, for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So did you find out, with the growing population, there's a lot of stress in the healthcare sector as well?
To say that I work in the healthcare sector is not true. I was redeployed to public health. I was the only non-nurse in a room.
But using this data that you used for museums, what are the other areas that the City of Ottawa could benefit?
We already have, funny, I just found out the other day of a colleague in Public Works who is using it. And we didn't even know about this. I was just having a casual conversation with her. We're changing the garbage limits in Ottawa, and this is a big deal for people, how many bags you can put out. And so they've been doing some promotions and doing door knocking. And she told me that she's been just pulling neighborhood data and the PRISM segments and sharing the social values. So when her colleagues go to talk to people in the community, they have a general idea of what will resonate, what to say, what maybe don't talk about, and how to approach them. So this is the thing, when you understand who the people are, you can really tailor what you're saying to them to make sure that you get that hook and you're speaking their language.
We have a couple of hands up. I see you in the middle there. Yeah.
Have you been able to do any competitive analysis and targeting?
This is where I don't even know what that means, because I'm not a marketing person. Like, what does that mean?
The short answer is not yet.
Not yet.
But I have plans for that. So Melissa will talk.
If you mean have we started using it yet? Like, we literally just finished the groupings a couple weeks ago, and we're really excited to roll out the implementation. The marketing thing for us, we think, is going to be game-changing. So I know all this stuff about the people, but I also know where they consume their media. And that's going to be huge for us, because right now everyone's just like, put it in the paper. And now I can say, these guys don't read the paper. We need to go over here, right?
Have you thought of separating the building from the open space? And like, I know one of the problems you would get into would be like sparse data for smaller areas, if you have encountered with that or not.
We did that. And that was the problem, right? Now, we have to be very careful on how we were using the data when it is sparse, right? Like, I have to be very conscientious that it is a limited data set. So, like, for example, the data set for the grounds at Pinny's Point, it's such a big data set, I feel really confident in it. But we have, and there is some takeaways. It's not only statistically significant, but it does have some insights, and I can add it with the data that I do have to validate and check.